Hey, welcome to Lehto's Law. I'm Steve Lehto, and today we're going to talk about how to sell a used car. How to sell a used car. I'm going to jam as much as I can into a single video here for you because I've talked about some of these issues on and off, but I've gotten a lot of feedback from people over the years, articles I've written, podcasts I've done back when I hosted a radio show, or just simply talking to people in my office, that it's obvious that a lot of people don't know how to sell a used car. So I'm going to tell you the stuff you need to think about, the pitfalls you can avoid, and how best to sell a used car to where it'll go smoothly for you and not turn into a legal nightmare. First of all, I'm going to assume you're an individual. Everything I'm telling you is aimed at individuals selling cars. So if you're a car dealer, you don't need my help. I assume you can sell cars on your own, but the laws are different for car dealers than they are for individuals. So the laws I'm talking about right now are the things that will affect you if you are just a person selling a car. First of all, you need to find your title. Got to start somewhere, right? And I'm here to tell you that a lot of people will actually go to sell a car and they can't find their title. Nothing will snag your sale faster than if you can't find the paperwork, because you got to have a title to sell the car. So go dig your title out. If you can't find it, you can go get a new one. In Michigan, for instance, you can go to the Secretary of State's office and get a replacement title. There are even places that can get you a replacement title same day, a quickie title. They actually have those. So you can do that, but you have to get the title. Number two, you have to determine if the title's got a lien on it. You should know this, but if you borrowed money to buy your car, if there's a lien on your title, you got to get that lien removed to sell the car. Now, if your car loan has been paid off, okay, you should have gotten a lien termination statement from your bank. Go find it. You need that also. You might want to, if you have time, take the lien termination statement and the title into your Secretary of State's office or DMV and have them issue you a new title with a clear title with no lien on it. Okay, because that'll actually be a little bit more attractive to a buyer, because some buyers, they see a title with a lien on it and you've got a piece of paper that says there's no lien. Some people will wonder. But anyways, get your title, take care of the lien. If you can't get rid of the lien on your own, that is like, you still owe $1,000 in the car, but you're going to sell the car for $6,000. You're going to have to then, when you sell the car, go with the buyer to the bank and pay off the lien, get the lien termination statement, and then turn the car over that way. Some buyers might not like that either, but you can do it. It's doable, but call your bank and find out how they can take care of that, because they might say you need to go into a particular branch to get it, or you may need to speak to a different kind of person. Obviously you can't do this at the drive-through. So get the title, deal with the lien if necessary, and then go from there. The first thing you got to do when you sit down and go, I'm going to sell my car, you have to determine what it's worth. Okay, what are you going to ask for it? There's a bunch of different places you can do this. You can go online. You can look at Kelley Blue Book or other sites. I often say Blue Book, and I know that's a term of art, but it's also a trademark. It's black books, red books, green books, you name it. I understand that. But you can go into the internet and find different places that will allow you to price your car. And they'll actually even say what the car is worth in a particular zip code or a particular area. And they'll give you a clean price, a rough price, and so on. And keep in mind, these are ranges, but it'll give you an idea. But just because they say, hey, a clean car is going to sell for $8,000, and you put $8,000 in your car, it doesn't mean you're going to get it, but at least you're not insane and asking some price for people to go, this person's out of their mind. So go online, do the math, and do some research and find out what your car is worth. And keep in mind that you may have to spend some time to sell your car. You're not going to sell it tomorrow. If you do sell it tomorrow, your price is too low. But you're going to want to, figure this out. If you've got some time to work on this, get the price set, and then work from there. Now, the next thing you have to do is advertise the car for sale. If you want to, you can put a sign in the window that says for sale and park it at the end of your driveway. And that will limit you to the number of people who pass by your driveway every day as to the people who potentially might be interested in buying that car. How many of them will drive by your driveway? Who knows? So that means you're going to have to do the unthinkable and enter the world of Craigslist or otherwise. I know you can go on eBay and there's a bunch of other websites where you can sell cars. It depends on how much money you want to sink into putting your car listing someplace. And understand that anything that gets listed on Craigslist will become a magnet for insane scams. You will get inundated with hundreds of scam offers for every legitimate person who's looking for your car. So, you can post, as an experiment, if you want to, just for fun this afternoon, invent a car. Invent one that doesn't exist. Say I've got a 1937 Lanka. and it's a car that was made in South America. It's got 3 wheels, and it runs on potato oil. You will get people calling you saying, "Hey, I want to buy that car. I'm going to mail you a money order." Okay, doesn't matter. But the point is that you're going to have to wade through that kind of nonsense to sell your car. It's one of the reasons that some people say, "Hey, you know something? Let's skip all this and just trade the car in." And I know people say, "Well, Steve, trading a car in, you get hosed because they never give you what the car's worth." Well, they don't. But what they make up for is you don't have to go through all this nonsense of selling your car and dealing with the crazy people on Craigslist. But you have to advertise the car someplace. Now, here's the important part. Advertise the car and deal with people honestly. I understand there's people out there right now who are saying, "Steve, are you insane? We're talking selling a used car and you're talking about honesty." The point is that you have to advertise the car truthfully, okay? So, if it's a one-owner car and you're the first owner, you can say it's a one-owner car. But if you bought the car at an auction, you got no idea how many people have owned it before. You don't say, "Hey, it's a one-owner car." This seems like common sense, but for some odd reason, I've seen people advertise things, and I've asked them. They said, "Oh, I just put that in there to get phone calls." Nothing worse than calling a guy and asking him questions about something he's advertising, and then have the guy say, "Well, by the way, I admit I lied to you." Okay, advertise it truthfully. And the reason I'm saying that is that one of the biggest complaints that people have is they buy a car from somebody and they find out that the seller lied to them. And people will get offended by that. And it may or may not cause any trouble down the road, but you want to do what you can to keep the transaction going smoothly. So I suggest you advertise the car truthfully. And I'm not just talking about the advertisement itself. I'm talking about when they call you and ask you questions. So they call and ask you questions. Has it been in an accident? If you're the only owner of that car and it's never been in an accident, say so. But if the car's been in an accident where it actually got body work done and an insurance claim was filed, you don't want to say, "No, it's never been in an accident," because number one, they can pull a Carfax and find out that, hey, it's been in an accident if it shows there. And number two, a person who knows what they're looking for might be able to find evidence of the damage and go, "Hey, this thing's been in an accident. You lied to me." And once they figure out you've lied to them, it's going to make things harder. Now, it's important to understand that any car sold by an individual in America is presumed to be sold as is. And that means there's no warranty of merchantability. That means that the person who buys the car from you can't assume anything about it, like the car is going to run great or the car is going to last 10 years or anything like that. It's all out the window. But the thing is that is a presumption that exists regardless, meaning that you don't have to tell the person, "I'm selling you the car as is." I see ads where people say, "I'm selling a car and I'm selling it to you as is." Well, it's redundant. You're also telling me I'm selling you a car and it's a car, okay? If I'm an individual selling a car, it's as is. But some people like to say that because they think, hey, if I tell them that, they're less likely to come back and yell at me. Maybe, but most people don't understand what as is means. So, whether that's going to help or not, I don't know. But one thing I urge you to do is let the person who wants to buy your car inspect it, and don't rush them through that. And I know that this is one of those things that's going to be kind of hard to quantify. But I've heard from people who said, I went out to look at a car and the guy wouldn't let me inspect it or he wouldn't let me drive it. And my first thought is, well, why'd you buy it then? But I really think that if you let somebody freely inspect the car, you want to inspect the car, inspect the car. Want to climb underneath it. You want to take it to your mechanic? Sure, let's both hop in the car, we'll drive down, we'll see your mechanic. I'm not saying let them have the car for a weekend or something, but I'm saying cooperate with them and say, hey, you want to have the car inspected? Have it inspected. You want, whatever you want to do. Want to go for a test drive? Now, here's the thing. I am leery about tossing the keys to a stranger and saying, go for a test drive and come back in half an hour and tell me how it went, okay? If a car's got an automatic transmission and the person you're talking to is thinking about buying your car, it doesn't look insane, I don't think I'd have any trouble tossing the keys and going, let's go for a drive, and letting the person drive the car while you're in it with them. But one of the problems I can imagine is if you had a clutch and the person doesn't look like they know how to drive a clutch. I wouldn't want them learning on the test drive with my car. So again, advertise the car truthfully. When they ask you questions, tell them the truth. If the car is good, tell them it's a good car, but you can't make crazy statements about the car that aren't true. And like I said, let them inspect it, let them test drive it, and so on. Now, one of the biggest problems, obviously, is when you go to sell the car, how are they going to pay you, okay? So if you're selling a car for $1,000, someone might actually show up with a wad of cash and go, here, boom, 10 big head Franklins for you, and you're good to go, right? Well, the problem is, what if it's an $18,000 car? You got a slightly different issue. And at that point, you're going to have to do what you can to make sure that what they're paying you with is good, okay? So we've all heard stories, but people show up with something that looks like a good money order, and they take it to their bank, and 3 days later, the bank goes, hey, that thing was forged. The thing was printed on a laser printer. See previous podcast, and so on. So one of the things that you're going to want to make sure is that you can really trust the thing they're giving you to pay you with. If it's cash, obviously cash is good. If it's not cash, if it's money order, something like that, you might want to have them go with you to the bank and make sure that the instrument that they're presenting you with is actually a negotiable instrument. Now, one of the other things is I've had a lot of people ask me about bills of sale. Do I want to do a bill of sale or some kind of paperwork to indicate I sold somebody a car? Now, you can, but you don't actually have to. And this actually came up recently. I get somebody actually kind of reach out to me using the bat signal, telling me to log in and look at something in opposite lock and answer a question for somebody, because somebody said, I sold a guy a car, we did a bill of sale, the guy drove off and called me almost immediately, said he had a mechanical problem with the car, but he hasn't registered it or titled it in his own name yet. Am I on the hook? And I had to explain to the person, no, when you sell something to somebody and you hand them the keys and they hand you the money, at that moment, the sale took place. That's the sale. Sale's done, okay? Now, when they leave, if they go register it or title it, yeah, that does help prove that that person now owns that car. But the actual sale took place at the moment that the things were transacted. The keys went one way and the title, and the cash went the other way. At that moment, when I hand you the title, it's your car. It doesn't become your car only when you get that title processed at the Secretary of State's office, because otherwise, if you lost the title driving there, do I get my car back? Of course not. So the question is, do you need to do a bill of sale? You don't need to, unless your state requires it. I'm not sure if any states actually require it, but I could be wrong. But in Michigan, there's no requirement for a bill of sale, but you can do one. I actually did a bill of sale for the guy who sold me my canoe. Guy brought me sold me a big aluminum canoe built in 1960. It has a hull number on it, but no title. And I thought to myself, well, when I go to the Secretary of State's office to get the boating license for it, how do I prove I own this thing? You look it up, it turns out a bill of sale is what you can do. So I did a bill of sale. These things, by the way, are all free on the internet. Look on the internet, you can find a form for a bill of sale. It's basically going to say, I, Bob Seller, am selling this car, identified such, to Joe Buyer for this amount of money. We both sign it, date it, boom. And you're good to go. And that helps. I've had people tell me to do a bill of sale that says, I'm selling the car as is. And again, I say, well, you can do that if you want, but it's redundant. And I've had people say, well, I feel better having somebody sign a document acknowledging they're buying it as is. I say, great, if they'll do that. One of the concerns, though, is that someone might get a little iffy on signing the stuff, going, wait, I'm buying a car from you, but now I'm signing a document saying I'm buying something with restrictions on it? Because people don't know what as is means, okay? Clearly. So the other question is, even if you don't do a bill of sale, should you do a cash receipt? Somebody's giving you cash for the car, you want to do the receipt thing, you can do that also. But again, the question is whether or not you actually need to do that, whether it's legally required. Now, I will tell you that the biggest problem that happens when people sell cars and they screw things up is they don't make sure that the buyer transfers the title into their name. This is the number one problem. I'm not saying it's the most common problem, but it happens often enough, but with such severe consequences, you should be aware of this. In Michigan, you can go to the Secretary of State's office with your buyer. The two of you walk up to the counter. You go, I'm selling the car to him. The nice person behind the counter says, thank you very much. You sign some documents, boom, 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 and you walk out of there with a document showing that the title was yours, but now it's theirs. It becomes their problem. The reason you like to do that is so that, unlike the person who called my office last week, who said, Steve, I sold a car 3 years ago, and for the last 3 years I've been getting tickets from another state saying I'm not paying my tolls. I'm just blowing through toll booths, and it turns out that it's the car I sold somebody. And apparently the license plate was still on it. In Michigan, you keep your own license plates. I'm not sure, but apparently in some states, you can sell a car with license plates. I don't know why they would do that. That seems stupid to me. But if that's what it is in your state and you have to sell the plate, I guess. But if you can keep the plate, you should keep the plate. Otherwise, you might start getting parking tickets and toll violations from some other state. So you want to do what you can to make sure the person titles the car in their own name. Now, some states, Florida, I believe, is one, where you sell a car to somebody, you can tear a piece of the title off and file it with the state and say, I sold the car to this person on this date. Okay? And the Secretary of State's office, or DMV, gets that and they go, oh, okay, Steve Lehto used to own this car, but now he says he sold it to somebody else. Here's the problem. What if that person doesn't go and immediately title the car? Okay, they go out and they kill a few people with it, and they drive it through a couple buildings, and it catches on fire and burns down half a city, and then they send me the bill because they go, well, he never registered it, and we don't know. I mean, you submitted something very self-serving to us, but we don't know for a fact that's evidence of anything. So do what you can to get that person to title the car in their own name. And it's funny because I know people in other states who go, really? You go to the Secretary of State's office, DMV, and actually do that? And I'd say, something, look it up and see if you can. Because number one, I've done it a bunch of times. It's not that big of a deal. And if they're going to do it anyway, why not do it now? Okay, it makes the most sense to have the buyer and the seller hand the title back and forth, and you can see that person getting the title application filled out and pushed across the counter. You're good. You're clean at this point. Why not do that? Now people say, well, I don't know, it's a lot of work. But it's nothing compared to what's going to happen to you, like I said, when they don't title it in their own name. So you have to be careful of that. The other thing is that in some states, and Michigan, for instance, even now, they've changed the rules on this. They will allow you to buy a car from somebody, and before you register or plate it, to drive it home. Now, it seems crazy to me because you know how human nature is, right? People are going to say, well, I drove it home. I don't have time to go to the Secretary of State's office today. Maybe I can go there Thursday, but I got to go to work tomorrow, so I'll just drive it to work tomorrow. And then next thing you know, it's push back. And then one day, a cop comes along, and he sees you driving along with no plates and pulls you over, and you go, oh, I just bought the car. Now, it may or may not fly. I don't know. But the point is that my concern is that if you were in Michigan and you sold the car to somebody and you didn't go get the title transferred and they are going to drive it home, how long are they going to drive it before they actually get the registration and all that stuff transferred over? So you want to make sure that gets taken care of. That, in my mind, is the biggest problem, and it's one of the most common things I hear complaints about, and it's an ugly, ugly situation. Like I said, if nothing else, if you're in a state where you can keep the license plate, keep the license plate, okay? Take the license plate off, and hey, I'm selling you the car. I'm not selling you my license plate, okay? Now, again, I know there are states where the license plates travel with the cars. I'm not speaking to you. I'm speaking to the people in the states like Michigan where you sell the car, you keep your plate. Even if they ask you, do you mind if I keep your plate? Yes, I do. I don't want to get sued. And for those of you who've stuck with me this long, I'm going to let you know right now. I'm about to pause the video, stand up, press 2 buttons, come back down because we're going to go over 20 minutes. Stick around. Hey now. So, the license plate, it's important to get that back if you can, and to make sure that they get the vehicle titled and registered in their name. Get it out of your life. Now, there are a couple other things that will happen when you go to sell a used car. And I'm here to tell you, doesn't matter how well you live your life, this is going to happen to you. You sell a used car to somebody, you were honest. They said, how's it run? You said, yeah, it runs pretty good. 10-year-old car, but it runs pretty good. They said, you maintain it? You go, yeah, I can show you the oil change receipts. Maintain it. Have you had any major problems with it? Not really. I had this done, that done. I can show you the receipts, but other than that, nothing. Keep the car in a garage, drive to work and back, but look at it. It's clean, it's nice, it's a good running car. Say, okay, keys title one way, cash the other way, we shake hands, person drives off, and they get it titled in their own name. They're going to call you in a week and a half, and say the transmission blew up. The fuel pump failed. It threw a rod. Blew a head gasket. And any number of other catastrophic things. Timing chain broke, timing belt broke, those kinds of things. Now, those are all things that can happen to any car, okay? The odds of it happening to your car today are pretty slim. But we all know that if you got a car, high mileage car, driving down the road one day, the timing belt could break. if it has one. Okay? It could just happen. Just happen. Now, the person who just buys the car thinks to themselves, I just bought this car 5 days ago. What are the odds that I just bought the car 5 days ago and the timing belt broke today? What are the odds? I think I got scammed. Now, it's human nature, by the way. The person who bought the car and feels that way, I don't blame them for having feelings. They're human, okay? And people tend to think that, hey, this happens, there must be a causal relationship between the two. And what are the odds that I bought the car and this thing happened? This person must have ripped me off, okay? And there's two different trains of thought here. One is they knew this was going to happen, and so they scammed me. Or even if they didn't scam me, I should get like a discount because I got less than I bargained for. So I hear, number two, this is the number two thing I hear the most. I hear people say, I sold a car to a guy. He called me a week later, a month later, a few months later. But it's obviously the closer to the sale that something happens, the worse it is. And the guy either wants to bring the car back, and he wants all his money back, or he wants me to pay to have something fixed, or he's making all kinds of noises about what he can do here, but he's basically saying that I ripped him off. What should I do? And I always tell people in that situation, since you sold the car as is, and if you followed my advice, you were truthful about the problems that the car had or did not have, you have zero obligation or liability to take care of that person. Now, I've had people say, Steve, what if it's something minor and I just feel bad? I say, well, you can give the guy some money. You can also give me money. I'll take your money. You can give your money to children on the street. You can send it to orphans in South America. There's people in the world who need your money. Now, this guy who just bought your vehicle might be one of them. And if you want to give him money because you feel bad, I can't stop you from giving away your money. It sounds like an odd thing for me to say, but I'll tell you right now, if you call the guy up and say, you know something, I got your text message that the engine timing belt broke, and I'll help you with that. That's going to turn into, I took it to my shop, the guy took the engine apart and said, not only does it need a timing belt, while I'm in there, he wants me to do this. Next thing you know, we're doing everything down to the crankshaft. And oh, by the way, it's a $19,000 job and the car only costs $2,000 or something. Who knows? I'm making stuff up here for emphasis. But the point is, I would suggest you not do that. Not because I'm not a nice guy. I'm a very nice guy. And not because I don't want you to be a nice person. But there are times in life where you actually got to look at something and say, what should I do here? And think it through. And I assure you that that will backfire on you. And if it doesn't backfire on you, you dodged a bullet. Because I've heard just as many phone calls from people who said, guy called me. It literally happened 3 days after I sold the vehicle, 4 days, 5 days. It was so short after the sale that I was convinced that that guy almost was right in thinking he deserved something from me because I sold him the car that only lasted 4 days. But if you honestly didn't know anything wrong with the car, you know that mathematically, if the car's going to break down, it's going to happen from time to time that people buy a used car and blows up on the drive home. It does happen. It can happen. It's just a matter of probabilities and odds. So I would urge you to rethink the idea that you're going to help somebody with that. But if you want to, you can, but watch it backfire because it will. Okay? So people do get upset over breakdowns if they call you and say, hey, I just bought the vehicle from you 3 days ago. The engine just exploded. I want some money back, or I want to give you the car back. My advice to you as a lawyer is you don't owe them anything. And so what I would urge you to do as your counselor, Steve Lehto, attorney at law and counselor, is I would counsel you to say, do whatever you can to get off the phone, but don't promise them anything. And if they keep bugging you, block their number. Now, the problem is they probably know where you live, but people will go away eventually. And many people will realize they've got no leg to stand on. Here's the problem. Problem number 3. Of the 3 problems, and I'll reiterate for you, number 1 was the failure to title the car. Number 2 was the people who are upset over breakdowns. The number 3 problem is they will threaten to sue you. You will get a phone call angry voicemail or an all caps text where they're going to say, I just talked to an attorney and we're going to sue you because the car I bought from you a week ago, the engine blew up, you committed fraud, you committed malfeasance. They're going to throw in all kinds of legal sounding gibberish. But number one, anybody can threaten to sue anybody. It's very easy to do. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to fly to the moon tomorrow. I can just say it. Okay? The words aren't stopped by their improbability. So I can call you up and say, I'm going to sue you. Now, here's the thing. If I, an attorney, call you up and threaten to sue you, you should probably say, this guy does file lawsuits. Maybe he can sue me. But when some guy calls you and says, I bought a $500 truck from you 3 days ago, the engine blew up, I want my money back, and you say, can't have it, and he says, okay, I'm going to sue you. I can tell you from my own observations, 99.9% of those threats go nowhere. Literally go nowhere. You will never hear from the person again unless you get a few more angry texts, a couple late night drunk dial phone calls. But generally speaking, threats to sue do not pan out. However, once in a great while, it does happen where some guy's cousin is an attorney or some guy goes to legal aid and the legal aid guy goes, whatever, I got nothing better to do tomorrow, I'll file a lawsuit. And they're going to file a lawsuit. That does happen, but I'm guessing it's 1 out of 1,000, if not 1 out of 500, right around there, of these things actually turning into lawsuits. And once in a while, it turns into a small claims court lawsuit. That is, and by the way, I get these phone calls all the time. People call me and they say, Steve, I just bought a used car, the engine blew up. And I go, who'd you buy it from, dealer or an individual? An individual. Okay, is there any indication that the person selling you the car knew that it had a problem, that they somehow committed fraud? No. So it could just be that the engine just blew up. They go, yeah. You get no case. They go, well, can I sue in small claims court? For some odd reason, people think that small claims court, I suspect because it's been on TV for so long with People's Court, that they think it's not real or like the laws don't apply. If you go to small claims court, the only thing that's different is the procedure and the amount of money you can get. But the law stays the same. They don't dumb down the laws or make the laws less powerful in small claims court. Now, it's true. You go in without an attorney, and so does the other side. And so when you go into court, assuming you actually got sued in small claims court, the other person can get up there and go, Your Honor, I bought this $500 truck from that man. 3 days later, the engine blew up. And the judge is going to look at you and go, look at the seller and go, why are they liable for that? And the buyer is going to say, well, I bought the car and 3 days later. I mean, isn't there some law or something? The judge is going to go, you haven't pointed one out to me yet. What's the law? And the only thing you could possibly argue, I suppose, is if they were trying to say that you committed some sort of fraud. And you've got to prove the mental state of the seller and prove that they actually withheld facts or covered something up or something. But in a typical case, you bought a used car, the engine blew up, that isn't actually a case. It's not a case worth bringing. So those cases get thrown out all the time. I've spoken to people before who said I got sued in small claims court. I go to court, treat it like the people's court, get up, dress nice, tell the judge your side. And if the guy can't prove something beyond, hey, the car just blew up, he's not going to win. So the threat to sue might come down the line somewhere if you do sell a car that has some problems later. But like I said, you're covered because, number one, the law is on your side. You sold it as is. Also, if you're honest in your advertising and in your dealings with them. And also, here's the funny thing. If you let them inspect it, remember earlier I said let them inspect it. Let them inspect it. There's a reason you want them to inspect it. Because if you were to ever wind up in court later on down the road and you're in front of a judge and the judge looks at you, let's assume the judge is pretending to give everybody a fair hearing here and says to you, the seller, what do you have to say about this? You say, well, Your Honor, I drove the car for 10 years. I took good care of it. I showed him the receipts, all this stuff. And not only did I show all this stuff to him and explain all this stuff to him, I encouraged him to inspect it. I encouraged him to test drive it. And I even said, hey, let's take it to your mechanic. We'll both go down to your mechanic and have a mechanic look at it. What else am I supposed to do? I can't predict the future. And like I said, on those facts, you should win. Now, is it possible you lose that one? It's hard to say. Anything's possible. But like I said, the odds of that happening to you and you being sued and losing, astronomically slim. It ain't going to happen. The final thing I got to tell you is two parts. Is you've got to be careful about selling a used car to a relative. I know what you're saying, and I know what you're thinking. You're going to say, Steve, I just recently sold a car to a dear friend of mine, a dear relative of mine, and everything went fine. Everyone's happy. It can work out. I get more phone calls from people who say, Steve, I sold a car to a relative. A week later, the engine blew up. Now, you can't block that phone call. You can't cut that person out. Well, you could, but you probably shouldn't. Cut that person out of your life because you're disputing over a car. Now, what do you do when they call you and say, hey, the engine just blew up? And people will feel more of an obligation to a relative. It's hard to tell a relative, hey, legally, you have no leg to stand on. Sorry, you're out of luck. It's hard to say that to a relative. But the other problem is, I know a lot of people who sold cars to relatives on time. That is, I'm going to sell you the car. You can pay me $100 a month till we're paid off. Okay? Sell you the car, you make payments to me, or you give me one big down payment, pay me the rest when you get your new job, or whatever. And I have people tell me, they say they got the first payment fine, and their relatives out driving the car around, and they're driving the car around, and they're not making payments. Now what do you do? Are you going to repossess the car from your relative? Number one, you probably can't because you probably didn't put a lien in the title. But number two, how much grief do you want to give your relative? And it depends, of course, on the degree of relationship, okay? You sell a car to a sibling, sell a car to a cousin. What about selling a car to a niece or a nephew, okay? And I can just tell you right now, in my life, I've actually represented a man who had to sue his nephew. Imagine those family reunions. So, I would caution you about selling a car to a relative. Now, don't get me wrong. I've got brothers, any one of whom I would sell a car to, and I know they'd pay me, okay? But I trust my brothers that much. But I'd also tell you that if I sold the car to a brother and he didn't pay me, I'd come right out here and say, guys, I screwed up. I sold the car to a brother and he didn't pay me. So, but like I said, it depends on the degree of relationship and how confident you are. Because like I said, if the engine blows up to a relative, it's different than the engine blows up on a stranger. So those are the problems and things you need to think about and how to sell a used car. And like I said, the three biggies are the failure to get the title transferred, the fact that they're going to call you when they're upset over breakdowns, and then they're going to threaten to sue you, possibly. So that's how you deal with it. Cover yourself, do the research. Questions or comments, as always, shoot them to the information at the bottom of the video or in the description underneath the podcast or the video. I thank you for watching and listening. Bye-bye.